Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana.
Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone.
Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat. Hello and welcome to Crimson Kickoff. Got the usual crew here. I'm Joe Cronin, Thomas Crow, Graham Nash, our whole production crew. One thing is different, though. We've changed locations. We are still live at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium, but rather than being outside in the cold, the sweet decks, potentially ruining our very expensive equipment, we've moved inside to the Level 6 press box in the Bo McMillan suite. We're bringing you everything you need to know about the IU football season. They're 7-0, fresh off that 38-13 win against the Michigan State Spartans. A lot of questions heading into that one. Could this Indiana team, bounce, not necessarily bounce back, but follow up their big time win, their biggest win of the season out in Eugene against the Oregon Ducks and be able to dominate? Graham, they did it. Shaky first half, but 5 consecutive touchdowns. That offense looks elite.
Yeah, that offense really picked it up. It was a slow start for the defense. And, you heard these terms like hangover game being tossed out there, wondering if Indiana may come out a little bit flat. The defense at times, it felt like it did, because that MSU offense went on a roll early on. 2 really, really long opening drives ended in scores for the Spartans. And it was those long drives that just kind of sucked some of the energy out of Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. Pretty similar to what Indiana did in Eugene, actually, did to the Ducks. Just, taking some of that energy away, allowing the Spartans to score. But then, Thomas, IU closed it down.
Well, Graham, the difference between the win here for the Hoosiers and the loss there for the Oregon Ducks is eventually the noise did get back into Memorial Stadium. Graham, 38-13 victory. Let's see the highlights. The fans, the parents, the students, everyone here in their gear for homecoming weekend in Bloomington. The Hoosiers looking to go 7-0 for the second straight year. They're going to start that way with E.J. Williams finding the soft spot in the zone, breaking a couple tackles and getting into the end zone. They'll go up 7-3, but Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh answer quickly. A slant, untouched into the end zone. Michigan State leads 10-7 after that.
Yeah, it gives those Spartans the lead right back after the Indiana Hoosiers got an impressive touchdown. But like the Spartans bounced back, the Hoosiers did too. This was all thanks to Waffle House, Elijah Surratt, giving the Jukes a little Lamar Jackson-y in his heyday. A really, really nice move, giving the Jukes out, and Indiana retook the lead.
Kalon Black doesn't need any jukes. He's just going to run through the face of the defense and score with just under a minute to go in the half. There was a small lightning delay, but there was no delay for the Hoosiers coming out of the halftime locker room. Omar Cooper on a post route, uncovered. The Hoosiers lead now 28-10.
Yeah, Omar Cooper Jr. with another 100-plus receiving yard game, his first since Indiana State. And the cherry on top was Elijah Surratt. Over the top, just a beautiful grab there, gets into the end zone for his touchdown in this ball game. Indiana would win this one 38-13 on homecoming weekend and move to number 2 in the AP poll.
Yeah, guys, every single game this season, the Hoosiers have outgained their opponents, but this one in particular was a lot closer than the rest of the season. And one thing that really stood out in the stat comp was Michigan State's passing offense. Aiden Childs arguably had his best game of the season. Yes, it was still, you're by the textbook definition, a blowout, but this is the most passing yards that Indiana has allowed all season long, by over 100 at that. The thing is, though, this team finds ways to win, and they did it in another convincing fashion. The offense was rolling. Defense definitely figured out in the second half. We'll have a full deep dive about the ins and outs of this team. But, Thomas, the Hoosiers, with all the shakeup that happened in college football, they move up to number 2 in the country. Last week when they were number 3, that was their highest ranking ever. Again, another award, another record that Kurt Cignetti is setting, and top 2 is all Big Ten, and right now Indiana is rolling at that number 2 spot, 7-0.
Yeah, Joe, last week it was 3 people, AP poll voters, who thought they were the best team in the nation. Now that number jumps up to 6 with Miami falling down. the top 10 running out here. Ohio State up there, Texas A&M undefeated. Alabama moved their way up. Georgia Tech still undefeated. And then it just rounds out with Vanderbilt, who's hosting College Game Day now this week. But guys, Hoosiers still at number 2.
Really interesting. I mean, going into this year, imagine on an outsider seeing Indiana, Georgia Tech, and Vanderbilt all in your top 10, Graham. I can't imagine many people were like, yes, that makes sense.
Not at all. It's unbelievable what's happened in the college football landscape. I think a lot of it is due to NIL. Some teams getting some really good players. The transfer portal, absolutely. I'll admit, I was a doubter of the transfer portal and of NIL. I didn't really think that it would shake out this way, where teams like Indiana and like Vanderbilt can compete with the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States. But that's starting to appear like the new trajectory, the new path for college football, and it's really fun.
Well, this was a team that had to rebuild a ton from last year, graduating a ton of guys with their last year of eligibility. But on the topic of transfers, there was some injury news with the Indiana Hoosiers. Defensive lineman who is really playing the stud position, Kellen Wyatt, transfer from Maryland, is likely going to be out for the season. Kurt Signetti said both on Monday and then just tonight when he was on the Don Fisher radio show. Wyatt was having arguably his best season up to date, was third in the Big Ten in tackles for loss with 8. He was dominating, and Thomas, this is a huge loss on that front, on that defensive front for Indiana.
Yeah, he's the guy who has just feasted on the multiple coverages that get thrown at Kamara. He's a guy who has exploded for the Hoosiers. Not necessarily a guy that we talked about week 0, I guess, before the first game of the season, but him, Tyreek Tucker, those guys have feasted, and now someone is going to have to step up and take over that role. Not only is he a guy that can get to the quarterback and get to running backs on the back, but in some of their simulated pressures, guys, they use him to drop into zones, and that's going to be a significant loss.
Absolutely. There's about a 3-man rotation playing that strong side defensive end between Mikal Kamara, Kellen Wyatt, and then Stephen Daly was the next guy. And speaking of stepping up, Graham, Stephen Daly, really came onto the scene against Michigan State. Has played well up to this point, but 2 sacks against the Spartans, and he looks like the guy that's going to really be filling those shoes. But it is a loss because depth was such an important part to this team. Yeah,
it is a loss, but it feels like Stephen Daly is kind of starting to find momentum at the right time. Unfortunate that it had to happen like this, but I mean, he's played 43 snaps in each of IU's last 3 games after averaging 20 in the previous 4. So he's starting to see more production. And over those last 3 games, he's been graded as the 8th best D end in Big Ten football. So he's playing well. He's peaking at the right time.
And let's not forget the monumental play he had against Oregon, coming up, getting his hands up against Dante Moore and allowing Lewis Moore to go get the rebound on the interception that ultimately led to Indiana getting a further lead in that game.
That was really the sealer right there, kind of going for the jugular, really set up by Stephen Daly. And I imagine some Indiana fans got a little deja vu seeing a Kent State defensive line transfer wearing number 8. I got the chance to talk to Stephen Daly, and he had a lot to say about, transferring to Indiana, his conversations with CJ West. Let's see what Stephen Daly had to say. I'm joined now by defensive lineman Stephen Daly. Stephen, your first 7 games as a Hoosiers, you've won every single one of them. What's been the most fun part of this process, playing for this team?
Winning in general. Last season or the past 2 years, that's the past 3 years of kind of just as one season I've won more just as one season I have in my past 3 years of college. So just kind of enjoying that process, but also getting to work every day during practice, kind of getting better and improving as a team so we can keep on winning.
You just mentioned that. Your previous 3 seasons at Kent State, you had 6 wins. Now you're at 7 here with Indiana. What were the struggles of that when you enter the portal, kind of the unknown of everything?
In general, kind of just leaving just a place you got comfortable with, just like the people in the area is kind of scary, and just like the unknown, like you never really know who's going to want you and all that, but also just kind of got to be willing to bet on myself and the ability I know I can bring to a team. Kind of just, also some people back home give me a little push. That'll help, but just kind of betting on myself and believing in myself, and then helped me make my decision.
CJ West played here last year, also was at Kent State, transferred over. How much did you talk to him maybe about, why Indiana?
Yeah, I talked to him a decent bit. I had a couple of phone calls with him, and on my OV visit, he was actually here in town, so he was kind of showing me around, telling me about everything. He definitely kind of, he even said, Steven, this is, it's way different. You come here, you'll love it. You'll love the coaching. They'll make you, the NFL kind of ready prospect. So it kind of helped out a lot with choosing here.
You're number 8. He wore number 8 for IU. Did you guys talk about that at all?
We didn't, but it was kind of cool that we were in the same number and came from the same place. So.
First impression of Kurt Signetti, Pat Coons, kind of this coaching staff. I mean, they're all business, really, right?
Yeah, I mean they're all business, but they still still know how to have fun. It's not too serious to the point where it's like you can't crack a smile here and there, make jokes with your teammates, but it's still like when it's time to work, it's time to work, and just being able to do that.
Obviously, a big hit to the room is Kellen Wyatt being down with that injury. What's the stress on yourself, really, the rest of that room, Mikhail, even the rest of the D-line to, next man up?
Yeah, it's definitely a huge loss. And, me and Mikhail kind of know, like, our rep count because it was like a 3-man rotation with me, Mikhail, and Kellen. And we just kind of know, like, where our reps are going to go up and kind of just some younger guys are going to have to, they weren't getting so many reps before. They got to start watching a little bit more film now, getting their playbooks. But we still think we got a good group, and so just got to keep on pushing, even without Kellen.
Only 2 more home games this season. I mean, what's kind of stood out about this atmosphere here at Memorial Stadium?
Fans love it here, man. I mean, they love football. I've never had a sold-out home crowd before, and it's nice, when you make a play on defense, the whole crowd is cheering for you, or even though it's hard to hear sometimes the defense because they're cheering on third down. It's hard to kind of communicate with each other, but that's a good thing because we know the offense. If we can't communicate as a defense, the offense definitely can't communicate. So it's kind of something that works in our favor. So, I mean, fans here are crazy. They love football. It's nice. They're very supportive. Like, if I just go somewhere gives food, they'll be like, thank you for everything you've done and good luck on the rest of the season. It's really nice.
Really last one for you. Has this team reached its potential yet?
No, not even close. I say defense. We had a little bit too many mistakes against Michigan State, and so we know we can play a lot better than what we did. So not even close to it yet.
All right, Steven, thank you so much. Best of luck against UCLA. Welcome back to Crimson Kickoff. To kind of more go in depth on the recap of Indiana's 38-13 win over Michigan State. Just dropped my pen right there. We got to start with the quarterback play. Fernando Mendoza, Graham, had, it seems like every single week we're like, oh, he just excelled. He did something ridiculous. He did it again. 4 incompletions, 4 touchdowns, his first 300-yard game as a Hoosier. It was terrific.
It was unbelievable. It was so efficient, so explosive as well, which was something that we talked about last week going into this week was, would Indiana be able to find its explosiveness a little bit against this Michigan State defense that had struggled? Throws like that where he was just on the mark, leading his receiver. I mean, you think back to that one with Omar Cooper that led to the touchdown. He dropped it right into the bucket. He was just so on target, on time. The receivers didn't have to wait for the football to get there. Whenever they turned or were out of their break, it was right there in their arms. He was placing it perfectly. And I mean, 4 incompletions.
And they just didn't pressure him hardly at all. We had the conversation last week about, right, do you pressure him or do you not pressure him? And it made his job very easy. The Michigan State Spartans kind of just stayed back most of the game. They were okay with the short passes, but the issue was, guys, they could not tackle. A lot of missed tackles on that unit and a lot of yards after contact.
I mean, it was something we talked about last week. This Michigan State defense was not very highly touted. They were giving up big plays. Their pass defense was in the bottom third of the country, let alone just the Big Ten itself. And Mendoza and these weapons were kind of able to exploit that in big ways. I mean, you just saw the highlights. Mendoza was finding pretty much wide open receivers. He did make some big time throws. That throw to Elijah Surratt was ridiculous. I mean, it was perfect. And yes, it was open on the post route, Thomas, but it was perfectly in stride to Omar Cooper.
That was as simple as a handoff. It's as simple as just giving the ball to Roman Hemby or Kaelon Black. Omar Cooper did not break stride. We'll see it in film room. I talk about it a little bit. It was a beautiful route combo from the receivers. It was a cover 2 defense. They got the safeties to come down, and Omar Cooper was wide open, like you said, Joe. That's as simple as just handing the ball off, but it's 40 yards down the field.
And Graham, on the accuracy, throughout this game, Mendoza went on a run of 12 consecutive completions before his final incompletion. It was his final throw of the game was on a 4th and 4 where he looked for E.J. Williams in the end zone. We'll touch more on that play here in a little bit. But his accuracy, his touch on the ball, it's among the best in the country.
Yeah, his completion percentage is, I think, 3rd best in the country right now. That, I think, speaks for it. He's behind only Ohio State's Julian Sand. And then Marshall's Carlos Del Rio Wilson. So his completion percentage is one of the best. I think it goes to that touch, that ability to go through his reads, his progressions with ease, and then also just with a good understanding of his surroundings. It comes back to that pressure. And that's why I think that's why we've seen so many teams blitz Fernando Mendoza, because like you said, Thomas, if you don't rush him, then you give him time to let a play develop. And that is, as the Spartans found out, probably the worst possible thing that you can do.
Honestly, one of the more compelling things about Mendoza is through these big time performances, he comes and talks to the media on Saturday, and it's all in favor of what his team's doing. He said the combination of the quarterback coach Whitmer, Shanahan, Signetti, and his weapons, it's the perfect marriage. And it seems like they really have the guy. He calls himself the point guard. He gets it out to his playmakers. Graham, let's talk about those playmakers on the outside. Omar Cooper Jr., another huge game, over 100 yards for him. And then Elijah Surratt does it again. Though that duo right there, they continue to impress. They continue to develop as one of the best receiving duos in the country to go along with this quarterback play of Mendoza.
Yeah, it really is one of the best duos in the country. And I think it's because they match each other's play really well, in the sense that Omar Cooper Jr., his average depth of target is much further than Elijah Surratt's, especially in certain games. If you look at those numbers, he's targeted much further down the field. But in that Oregon game, they kind of switched that. Elijah Surratt was more of that deep target, go to him in those important downs on third down, try to pick up big yardage and keep the offense alive. And then they would give it to Omar Cooper Jr. kind of in the flat and let him work, let him use that shiftiness and use a bit of that size that maybe Elijah Surratt doesn't exactly have, because Omar Cooper Jr. can just kind of bulldoze through some people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he can put a shoulder down and just go straight through some people. It's a really fun duo to watch, and there's no real one on this team is the issue. You gotta track down both at all times.
I do think there is a one. I think Elijah Surratt has separated himself. I think he is the blanket when things are needy, when things are dicey. And that Iowa and Oregon game, I think he really proved that. But Thomas, Omar Cooper, I mean, his ability just to break tackles, both just lowering the shoulder, and then he's shifty with his feet.
Yeah, first of all, the broken tackles. Michigan State did not tackle well, but 8 receptions, all of his targets were caught. And guys, the entire receiver room, really, first of all, there were only 4 incompletions. The thing we talked about last week, right? They didn't spread the wealth much against Oregon. This week, 6 guys caught passes. And interestingly enough, all 6 who caught passes caught multiple passes. But the thing I want to talk about with this receiver room, Elijah Surratt, he is the do-all receiver. Well, one thing that a really good receiver can do is kind of be a bait, actually.
Yeah.
And I think Coach Shanahan used him well in that way a couple times, especially on the E.J. Williams and the Omar Cooper touchdowns. The E.J. Williams touchdown, all his job was on that play was to get the deep safety to come down. He did so, and Omar was wide open. And then all he had to do on the E.J. Williams touchdown was to get the deep safety to go towards the right side of the end zone to allow E.J. Williams to sit in the middle of the zone. They used him as a decoy a couple times this week, which we haven't seen much, and it was effective.
I mean, the thing about Elijah Surratt this season is the Big Ten slate is where he's played his best football. He had another multi-touchdown game. That's his 3rd of the season. His 9 receiving touchdowns, Graham, are most in the entire country, and he's tied for 12th in FBS with 603 yards. I have to ask, guys, how many receivers can you name in college football that are better than Elijah Surratt? If you can name many. I mean, there are a few that obviously come to mind. There's someone over in Columbus who is a freak of nature wide receiver talent, but it's tough.
He is a freak of nature talent over there at Ohio State, but I did some digging, and those numbers between Elijah Surratt and Jeremiah Smith pretty much identical after, I think it was week 5. I'm not trying to argue that Elijah Surratt is better than.
I love how this is going.
No. The reason
okay to be bold.
The reason that I did the digging was because I found it really interesting that Jeremiah Smith, I think at the time, had the 4th best odds to win the Heisman, and Surratt wasn't anywhere on any list. You couldn't bet on him in any single way, shape, or form, and that's why I brought.
How much
that
of that goes to name value, though?
I think
First
that
of all, the Jeremiah Smith name, and secondly, the Ohio State name.
I will say Jeremiah Smith on the tape, he is getting blanketed. He is always having the over-to-the-top safety help. And I think Surratt is earning that respect more. Saw that more against Michigan State, like you talked about, where he's taking defenders away, but he's still also producing.
But that's why it's so gigantic to have Omar Cooper the same way that Ohio State has Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate has led their team in receiving a good amount of their games because of all the coverage that Jeremiah Smith is getting, similar to where Omar Cooper has led the Hoosiers in receiving a couple times because of all the blanketing that Elijah Surratt is getting. Now, might Jeremiah Smith be the better receiver? It's going to be tough to tell. We'll see towards the end of the season, maybe in Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, we'll touch on that a little more. I mean, they're the lone undefeated teams in the Big Ten, 2 of 6 remaining undefeated teams in the country, Indiana and Ohio State. I want to segue a little bit to the ground game for Indiana. It was something that through the first half of the season so far, they were so dominant. 4 consecutive games with 300-plus yards on the ground. The last 3, it's been much different. Yes, the caliber of defense has risen up with the Iowas, with the Oregons. I know the Michigan State game, it was Fernando Mendoza having 300-plus yards, but are they shifting away offensively? What's going on? I mean, Kalen Black was efficient, but they're not running the ball as much and really not as well, Graham.
Yeah, I think I think a big part of it is the defense. Even Michigan State's rushing defense, it wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. And I think that the big thing in this game against Michigan State is it kind of looked like they were trying to experiment a little bit with the ways to use Hemby and then Black, because they got a similar number of snaps, but Kalen Black was by far out-carried Roman Hemby, which is something that we hadn't really seen up to this point in the season. But Roman Hemby is clearly seen as a much better pass blocker because he was used a lot more in those scenarios where Mendoza was going to the air. I think that in this game specifically, we didn't see as many rushes because Fernando Mendoza was on track for 4 incompletions and 4 passing touchdowns. I don't think you take the rock out of that guy's hand when he's dealing that way. But I think that also, to a degree, this offense is trying to, experiment a little bit more, bring in Kalen Black a bit more, because he really didn't rush it much at all against Oregon. That was kind of the Roman Hemby show. I think they're trying to work those two a little bit more fluently.
Yeah, Graham, I would use the terminology you used. Instead of shifting away, I would say experimentation is where this kind of goes into. This was a game that I think Indiana knew they were going to win, and they decided, okay, this is a weak secondary for Michigan State. Let's see what we can do when we really get pass heavy and we don't do as much on the ground. Now, Kalen Black had a good game. He had 10 carries. He had over 60 yards, and he had that touchdown, but Roman Hemby had a concerning game, guys. He had 6 carries, 11 yards, and you take away his 1 9-yard rush, it's 5 rushes for 2 yards. That's not the Hemby that the Hoosiers expect to see week in, week out.
I feel like there might have been a stronger commitment from the Michigan State defense to really just not allow them to, punish them for, the 7 yards per carry like they had done to Illinois. And then also Fernando Mendoza had only 4 incompletions and 300-plus yards. So I think there is a bit of the complementary football that's going on with this team. Moving on to the defense, though, that's kind of where things in the first half, Graham, looked a little dicey. I mean, Michigan State, in their first 2 drives, they marched down the field in a bit of unconventional fashion. They weren't just, pounding the ball down the field. They were behind the sticks, and then Aiden Childs would go and make a remarkable play.
Yeah, it was kind of what we talked about the Indiana defense needed to do was contain, right? Because when Childs gets out into space and he scrambles, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And we really saw the struggles that Indiana has had against explosive plays come to life in this game, it felt like. I mean, the Hoosiers allowed a season-high 7 explosive plays in this game, and it was because of the creativity of Aiden Childs. And again, that dual-threat quarterback, being able to use his legs, being able to rush, proved to be an issue for the Hoosiers, who struggled against quarterbacks like that earlier this season.
Now, Thomas, one thing that this team kind of felt was it was going to be a little sluggish out of the gates. They were still coming off that massive win, but they did flip the script a little bit, only allowed the 3 points in the second half and really locked down on defense. And they've done it all year long. They get in the backfield. They get people behind the sticks, 4 sacks on Aiden Childs and 9 tackles for loss again.
Yeah, Joe, that's where Indiana won this game, right? They gave up a lot of yards. If you take away the negative yardage that are accounted for on sacks, Michigan State had over 400 yards in this game. But why did they only score 13 points? They only scored 13 points because Indiana got them behind the sticks with tackles for loss. Michigan State was getting over midfield, but they would run into a 2nd and 10 or a 3rd and 10 because of stuffed runs or sacking Childs, and that's just drive killers, guys. You can get over midfield all you want, but you don't have Brandon Aubrey to kick a 67-yarder, right? You have to get further down there to at least get a field goal attempt, and they just had too many drives stall out to get more points on the board.
Guys, this is a game, or I guess moving forward for Indiana, how they defensively go about things without Kellen Wyatt. Because this is a game where Elijah Hardy really came onto the scene, had 2 sacks along with Stephen Daly. This is a team that they kind of are rare in the college football scheme where they have 3 linebackers, 3 off-ball linebackers that can fly around the field, be in pass coverage, but also get in the backfield, Graham.
Yeah, they do a great job. I mean, those linebackers, we talked about it a lot after the Oregon game because that was truly a breakout game for that entire room. They did such a good job. And then in this game, it was a bit of the same. I mean, those linebackers were flying around, especially in the second half. It felt like they really kind of toned that down, tuned that in. And we're going to talk about this a bit coming to talk about UCLA. But the Bruins have a similar quarterback in the sense that he's shifty, right? And so it's going to be on the linebackers to, again, contain. You've got to have almost one guy as a spy. I think that this Michigan State game was a good test run almost, right? Because Childs, he's quick. He can maneuver so well around and outside of the pocket. But I think that these tight ends are starting to find a kind of rhythm with each other, starting to work with each other in a way that wasn't perfect in those non-conference games. Now they're getting it down. And again, without Kellen Wyatt, that's important because Stephen Daly, he's a great D tackle, but he's going to need some help scheme-wise to make sure that they can, again, contain a dual threat quarterback.
Now, bigger picture for this Indiana team is that they were able, once again, beat Oregon on the road, their biggest win of the season, one of the biggest in program history, come back, homecoming, pretty much dominate a conference opponent. And that's led by their quarterback, Thomas. And nationally, he's getting the recognition. He's, not talking a lot outside of the Saturday media, but he's getting the national recognition. The fans have a chant for him. They go Fernando Mendoza chanting his name. The Heisman Doza campaign is officially underway in Bloomington. And he's playing some of the best ball in the country. He's tied for first in the betting odds, right next to Alabama's Ty Simpson.
Yeah, 21 touchdowns, 2 interceptions is impressive for me. Only 8% off target rate for Fernando Mendoza. That's top 7 in the country. Julian saying playing well for Ohio State. He's got a lot of weapons similar to Mendoza. He is just kind of running through everybody, just like Ohio State is. They're 7-0. Then you look at Ty Simpson, Alabama, 4 straight wins against top 25 teams, including breaking the longest active home winning streak with Georgia. Guys, the other guy to talk about, we don't have him on the graphic. He's getting his chance to play on College Game Day this week. Watch out for Diego Pavia.
Diego Pavia might be there. I mean, watch out for Georgia Tech's Haynes King if they keep winning. This is a very interesting Heisman race for those 3 right there because usually you got just a playmaker that doesn't have a lot of weapons on the outside, but those 3 guys have uber talented receiving rooms, Graham.
Yeah, they do. That's something that we talked about a lot last week was who's the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the country, ironically, also the Big Ten. And one of those conversations was Ohio State. How does Ohio State, with that quarterback and wide receiver duo, stand up to Mendoza and Elijah Surratt? There's so many good players, good wide receivers, good running backs as well in college football this season. It feels like there are names that you can throw out left, right, and center. But I think it will come down to these big games. Who can live up in the biggest moments in the college football sphere?
I'll get a little aggressive here. It kind of feels like Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, and Marvin Harrison going down to Foxborough, playing Tom Brady, Deion Branch, and Randy Moss. There's 2 receivers on each side who can get it done and 2 very capable quarterbacks who can get it done. It feels like a collision course. And interestingly enough, it might end up in Lucas Oil Stadium.
That would be fascinating. I kind of like you bringing up the sheriff here on Crimson Kickoff. Thomas, I know you broke down some of Fernando Mendoza's highlights against Michigan State as well.
Yeah, we've already seen him, but Michigan State played a lot of zone in this game, and Indiana actually got burnt on a simulated pressure. I talk about it all in our film room. We'll send it that way. All right, guys, we're going over 3 plays from Indiana's win, 38-13 over Michigan State on Saturday. Let's start with an E.J. Williams touchdown. Now, what's going to happen is Omar Cooper is going to come in motion here, and he's going to occupy these 2 guys in the flat. First off, the issue here is this safety doesn't know if he's actually coming with Omar Cooper, if he's going to stay. A little bit of a miscommunication. That's going to allow E.J. Williams to come into this zone right here. Wayne Matthews, the linebacker, is not going to see him. He's going to sit flat. Fernando's going to roll, throw it to him. He's going to be wide open and roll in for the touchdown. 2 guys in the flat, right to Omar, right into the end zone there. Now, let's see it slow, see where the issues arise. First of all, you can see number 7 here coming in and seeing if he needs to stay on him. Then these 2 defenders are going to sit on Cooper. Surratt's covered up top. No one within 5 yards of E.J. Williams. Wayne Matthews and a couple other guys hit him about the 3-yard line. Pretty good effort to get into the end zone. Hoosiers go up 7-3 on that one. Now let's see a very similar play. Michigan State flipping on the heads of Indiana. First off, simulated pressure here, right? 7 guys at the line. They're only going to bring 4. One of which who isn't going to go is Kellen Wyatt. He's going to drop where he's supposed to go is into this zone right here. He's going to drop into the flat because of this running back. Hans, who's supposed to be the guy in the flat, is going to try and shift off Nick Marsh on his slant to Wyatt. Wyatt's not going to be there. And because of Nick Marsh going on a fake go into the slant, Lewis Moore's going to be too far out of the play to stop him from getting in the end zone. So look here, simulated pressure. Wyatt goes right. Marsh catches it. And look, they're already talking about a miscommunication. It's been the story of the defensive secondary for Indiana at times this year. Now let's see it. Simulated pressure. Wyatt drops, gets his eyes on that running back way too early, doesn't get the pass off that Pons was expecting him to be there for, and Marsh walks right in the end zone. Lewis Moore was out of the play. Michigan State actually leads this game now 10-7. Now let's see one of the best throws you'll see from Fernando Mendoza or any college quarterback this season. Surratt's going to come in motion. Omar Cooper's going to go up and on a post. It's cover 2. E.J. Williams is going to do his job and get this safety out of the way. Now, the reason that this play scores is because Surratt, when he gets to about right here, is going to hit a shoulder hitch, make it look like he's going outside, and then come back inside, which is going to make this safety make a decision to come down. He makes the wrong one. Watch the protection here, too. Comes in motion, fakes out, loses that defender. The safety drops, and wide open. One of the best throws. I mean, that's just a simple handoff at that point, throwing it that far down the field. Now, watch here. Great protection here. Elijah Surratt, he's going to fake outside right here. He's going to come inside. He's going to lose this defender, which is going to make this over-the-top safety come with him, and you'll just see the seas part for your Omar Cooper. Aiden West never really has a chance. E.J. Williams does his job on this safety. That safety comes and just pitch and catch. It's as simple as that. Indiana wins this one 38-13. This is one of the major plays why. Yeah, guys, it showed there. We talked about Elijah Surratt being used as a decoy. That Omar Cooper touchdown was exactly the flow. One thing we didn't talk about was the Indiana secondary, right? They've had a couple miscommunications. That one might be more attributed to Kellen Wyatt, but something that they're going to still have to clean up.
Graham, this seems like it's been a trend ever since that Kennesaw State game. That is when Cignetti came out and said there were some egregious mistakes in the secondary. It has definitely gotten better, but there are still mistakes.
Yeah, there are. And we've talked a lot about that safety room and how there have been some troubles with Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell, just trying to get everything situated there. The big thing that I remember early on in the season, I'm pretty sure it was after that Kennesaw State game that you're mentioning, Joe, was Cignetti said that, you know, the calls are getting to Aiden Fisher in time. Fisher is getting the calls to the corners and the safeties in time. People just aren't getting set in time. Like, that was the issue, is that those DBs weren't getting in the right spots, even though the information was coming. I think that's what we're seeing get cleaned up, but every now and again, there's still a slip in the cracks.
Now, as we move on, it is a wild world of college football in the 2025 season, but somehow this past weekend in Big Ten play was kind of normal. Our Brooks White breaks down this past weekend in the Big Ten.
Welcome back to Brooks's Big Ten Breakdown. Week 8 brought redemption, domination, and a few playoff statements. After that 18-point loss to USC, Michigan bounced back. 3 straight interceptions flipped the game, and freshman Jordan Marshall ran for 133 yards in a 24-7 win over Washington. The Wolverines visit Michigan State this week, where Washington hosts Illinois. In South Bend, number 13, Notre Dame's ground game ran wild. Jeremiah Love pushed for 228 yards, and Jadarian Price's 100-yard kick return stunned the Trojans. USC's offense still flashed, but with just 68 rushing yards, they were outmuscled. Both teams hit the bye this week. USC gets Nebraska in a week's time. Oregon rebounded from its loss to Indiana by shredding Rutgers for 750 yards. Dante Moore threw 4 touchdowns as the Ducks rolled 56-10. Oregon hosts Wisconsin next, where Rutgers heads to West Lafayette to play the Boilermakers. In Iowa City, transfer quarterback Mark Gronowski carried the Hawkeyes to a comeback win with 130 rushing yards and 2 scores. Iowa's now 5-2 and faces Minnesota next. Penn State drops to 0-4 in Big Ten play and travels to Ohio State in a week's time. That's your Big Ten breakdown. I'm Brooks White. We'll see you next week.
Welcome back to Crimson Kickoff. As always, a big thanks for Brooks for looking around what's happening in the conference. The Big Ten is very interesting this season. And yes, in years past, it's always kind of a top-heavy conference. You see those premier top echelon programs. And this year really is an emphasis on that. There are 3 teams in the top 10. There are a couple other ranked teams lower down, like the Michigans, Illinois, USC still receiving votes. But this is a conference, Thomas, that might only get 3 teams in the college football playoff. And for a conference that claims to be, top 2 and not 2, 3 teams isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, there's 2 undefeated teams, obviously, Indiana, Ohio State. One loss team that, unless something falters, probably should go and get in, which is Oregon. And then there's 8 5-2 teams, guys. And right now, one of those teams is going to have to make some statement wins and probably run the table to go to 10-2 to have any chance of making it into the college football playoff.
One I could see having the potential is a USC. Their lone loss in conference play is on the road at Illinois. Yes, Illinois has suffered some losses, but their losses are to Indiana and Ohio State. USC's second loss was this past weekend at Notre Dame, not a conference opponent, and a team that's also pushing their way into the playoffs and might, knock a Big Ten team out of the playoffs, Graham.
Yeah, it really could. It's dicey. It's so hard to look at the other Big Ten teams. You mentioned Illinois, Michigan, USC. The losses that those 3 teams have make it's hard to look past them. The only team that I can really look at their losses and be like, okay, sure, is Illinois. Number 2, Indiana. Number 1, Ohio State. Like, maybe they can squeak in. Michigan, I think it's going to be tough. USC, even, I think it's going to be tough. My prediction now would be Illinois would be the 4th team.
That would be interesting considering they got blanked against Ohio State and Indiana.
Yeah.
So that could be very interesting, come all this committee selection.
But they have the heads up over USC.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. So that's where everything gets crazy come late November. It's going to be so much fun to watch. A lot of crazy things happening this weekend around the country with some big-time games. A lot of them SEC. That's just the way the AP poll favors. With Ole Miss at Oklahoma, that's going to shake up the top 10. That's going to shape up playoff implications. One I'm looking at, though, it's in the American Conference. Yes, Memphis just lost to UAB. I think UAB had a bit of the interim bump in their favor. USF is right now the favorite to be the Group of 5 team in, but Memphis is still a quality football team. Obviously, it's a Group of 5 team. We'll see how everything plays out, but that's one that has some major playoff implications on that one. I mean, do you see USF kind of running the table, being that American, that Group of 5 representation in the college football playoff?
I think USF, they had a great win against North Texas a couple weeks ago. I think USF is a team that can make it in, but it's unfortunate for the fans of USF. I think Alex Golesh has gone pretty quick into the season.
Especially with all the shakeup happening this season in college football. I mean, even this past weekend had even more firings. It's kind of ridiculous. This is already matching 2022 at a very high number of firings. There's already 8 this college football season, Graham.
Yeah, I got the notification of Florida, Billy Napier, and with the way that Florida's trajectory has gone, it's not totally surprising, but just the number of coaches that have now gotten fired, it's unbelievable. You'd think, a lot of these coaches that have gotten fired, high-level coaches. I mean, James Franklin, a very high-quality winning coach in the Penn State program. My assumption would have been, okay, let him figure out the season, finish the season, and then we'll bring someone new in. Clearly, I know nothing about football because that has not been the way that this has gone at all. It's just been a wild ride to watch.
All the firings, and guys, it's not even Halloween. And Florida State's athletic department has already decided they need to back Mike Norvell, and Wisconsin's athletic department has already said, we'll let Fickle stay for now, guys. It's going to be chaotic at the end of the year.
I think the biggest thing is, especially in college football, what does a mid-season firing do unless there is a major controversy, scandal, or something like that? That's where things get really dicey. But we got to move on. Indiana hosts UCLA. This is only the second ever meeting between the Bruins and the Hoosiers, and it's coming in back-to-back seasons. Our Grace Jeffer previews UCLA on their 3-4 season.
Last week, here at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium, the Indiana Hoosiers made it a very successful homecoming weekend as they beat the Michigan State Spartans. This week, they stay home to take on the UCLA Bruins. Let's take a look. With a current win streak of 3, UCLA has had an impressive turnaround this season since its 42-37 victory against number 7 Penn State during Week 6. Last weekend, after a slow start, the Bruins defeated Maryland at home by a field goal 20-17. Offensive coordinator Jerry Neuheisel has undoubtedly contributed to the team's newfound rhythm. Sophomore quarterback Nico Iamaleava leads the Bruins with nearly 1,400 passing yards and a 131.3 passer rating through 7 games. The dual-threat Tennessee transfer is also on top for rushing yards with 360 yards on the season. He capitalizes on third downs as well, which is essential to UCLA's offense. Turnovers still remain a concern, with 2 thrown interceptions adding to his total of 5 this season. Sophomore wide receiver Quasi Gilmer leads UCLA with 369 yards this season, while redshirt senior wide receiver Titus Mokiao Atimalala has 240, recording his first 100-yard game against Maryland. UCLA's critical issues have been self-inflicted turnovers and penalties. The Bruins need to protect the ball more than they did last week, as these mistakes won't be so forgiving this weekend, where defensive back Lewis Moore leads the team with 4 interceptions. UCLA has been called on 59 penalties, costing them 515 yards, a third of them on false starts. The Bruins' newly established run game will be key. Ranking 5th in the Big Ten for rushing yards per attempt with 5, the Bruins should show this presence early. UCLA needs to be explosive on defense, as the Hoosiers are currently 7th nationally in total offense. Indiana's defense, ranking 7th nationally in total defense with 11.6 points allowed per game and 7th in yards per game with 248.7, means the Bruins have to stay calm under the intense pressure. And to make things here in Bloomington even more exciting, Fox Big Noon Kickoff will be on site. For iOS TV Sports, I'm Grace Jeffer.
Welcome back to Crimson Kickoff. The UCLA Bruins, they're 3-4. We got the towel that the Indiana faithful is going to have. A pretty simple design. Our executive director, Galen Clavio, that was the big whoop you just heard in the background a second time from Dr. GC. I'll let you hold on to that one, Graham. 3-4 for the Bruins. Yes, that's like a very mid-schedule, but this is a team that has had a roller coaster of a 2025. 3 games into the year, they were sitting at 0-3, and they decided to fire their head coach, Deshaun Foster, after just his 15th game. The assistant to the head coach, Tim Skipper, filled in as the head coach, and things have taken a complete turn. In Skipper's first game, they lost to Northwestern in the first Big Ten game of the season. But ever since then, the Bruins, they are on a 3-game win streak and are playing phenomenal ball. The ground game has been dominant, Grant, over 230 yards per game on the 3-game win streak.
Yeah, that rushing attack has really, really improved. It's really been better. So is the defense. I think that's another big part of this kind of rebirth for the UCLA Bruins. Kevin Coyle, who is now the defensive play caller, he's really done a phenomenal job just scheming and being able to tear down these opponents. Not too many turnovers. That forced fumble, one of few, that one as well. There's an interception on the season, but it's really been a steady effort of just not allowing consistent completions and keeping opponents behind the sticks. The defense has looked really good.
Tim Skipper has really done a great job just stepping up, taking control. And then Thomas offensively, the OC that stepped up after Tino Sinceri was let go. Jerry Neuheisel has really reshaped the way this offense is playing.
Well, not only reshaped how the offense is playing, reshaped the Big Ten itself. That marquee win against Penn State was a major contributor to their downfall. As Jerry Neuheisel, he played at UCLA, and now he's becoming a sensation around the nation.
Jerry Neuheisel, when he was at UCLA, he was the backup quarterback to 2 future NFL quarterbacks. One you might be able to get. He had a lot of hype at UCLA. The other one might be a little tough. Both of them have started at least like 8, 9 games.
One.
You have one.
I have one.
You got one. You go for it.
It's Josh Rosen.
It is Josh Rosen. That
yeah.
was his senior season. The other one was Brett Hundley.
I could have gone.
Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to spoil that for you.
No, I wouldn't.
But UCLA, they're coming to Bloomington. They're playing here at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium for the first time ever. Only the second ever meeting between IU and UCLA. One thing that UCLA knows about IU, they have a mascot this year, Hoosier the Bison. Our very own Grace Lesher goes on an in-depth about something new for Indiana, the Bison mascot.
Indiana football is now halfway through the regular season, and a new face has been with them every step of the way. Hoosier the Bison made his debut back in August after many efforts made by Indiana students, professors, staff, fans, and even Indiana football head coach Kurt Signetti. Hoosier arrived at Bloomington by jumping off the plane onto the Indiana football field and has been a crowd favorite ever since. He's had a very busy schedule, making appearances at more than just football games.
It's actually a really busy schedule. You'd be shocked with all that it has to do. There would be a volleyball match on Friday night. There will be a women's soccer match on Thursday night. The art museum has an opening, and they've asked Hoosier to come to be part of the opening. Someone for a bar mitzvah has booked Hoosier the Bison to come visit. So it has all sorts of public appearances even beyond our games that you wouldn't realize.
Throughout the week, Hoosier's busy practicing and training for his next event. Then, when IU football game days roll around, he is extremely busy with lots of physical activity involved. From riding out on a motorcycle to using the t-shirt cannon, Hoosiers all over the field hyping up Hoosier fans.
It's crowd surfing for a bit, it's leading chants, it's break dancing in the middle of the field, it's skydives in the field. Like, it's physical and it's hard, so we got to manage that.
His duties have extended beyond Bloomington, traveling to Indianapolis for Indiana volleyball's game against Purdue at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and even to Oregon to appear on College game day before the Hoosiers took on the Ducks. Kids and adults alike are excited when Hoosier is around, but he's not just popular among fans. Indiana athletes have loved having Hoosier around too.
We brought it to a volleyball match, and the entire swim team, one by one, lined up to get their picture taken with Hoosier the Bison. Elijah Surratt, in one of our teaser videos, genuinely was thrilled to see the Bison. The women's basketball team, when we filmed one of the segments for that video, went bananas when they saw the Bison for the first time.
Hoosier the Bison has already made a big impact here in Bloomington and will continue to be here for all the action when it comes to Indiana athletics. The Hoosiers are currently 7-0 and will play UCLA right here at Merchants Bank Field on Saturday. For iOS TV Sports, I'm Grace Lesher.
In a long-winded campaign that I feel like our executive director, Galen Clavio, started on the Bring Back the Bison movement, it came to fruition. Hoosier the Bison, he was out in Oregon. That was a fun little mascot battle right there between Hoosier and Puddles. But moving on, UCLA, they started the season 0-4, and I want to just talk about the shift that happened. Let's go through those first 4 games, Thomas, and really the comparison through the next 3.
Yeah, it was a bad first couple games for the whole team. They only scored 57 points in those 4 games. After that, they scored almost 20 more points per game, over 100 more rush yards per game in the last 3. And what I think might be one of the biggest changes, 17% more better on third down. They're averaging a 50% on third down to be 17th nationally. And then Nico Iamaleava, I think that was all right.
Iamaleava.
Whatever you guys say. And in his first 4 games, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Since then, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's played a lot better.
Yeah, Jerry Neuheisel has completely changed the way that Nico has operated with this UCLA Bruins team. Under Jerry Neuheisel, Nico has been graded as the number 16 quarterback in the country via PFF. He has been unbelievable. And a big reason for that is his ability to run. Graded as the 6th best rushing quarterback nationally over the past 3 weeks. It feels like Neuheisel has kind of opened the door for him to use his legs. He's kind of had to, because there have been some serious offensive line struggles for the UCLA Bruins, but it feels like Yamaleava has really come into his own under Jerry Neuheisel.
Nico had a terrific day on the ground in that kind of marquee first win of the season against the Penn State Nittany Lions, where that changed the trajectory of the Big Ten this season. That's when the wheels were officially falling off the wagon for Penn State, and the wheels were getting sewn back onto the UCLA wagon to get their season churning. He's done a great job with his legs, but the thing I'm looking at is the injury he sustained against Maryland. He got really banged up, was able to come back for that game-winning go-ahead field goal drive to seal things off for that 3rd straight win. But his legs are going to be more of a problem now if he's banged up, Graham.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely something to watch out for. But the other thing is that this Indiana D-line is a little bit depleted. No Kellen Wyatt. How can Stephen Daly step up to the plate? So that could maybe even the playing field a little bit. Again, I don't think it really does, because the UCLA offensive line has really had trouble protecting Nico. That's been the big thing. I mean, they've allowed 31 pressures and 8 sacks over the last 3 games, tied for 15th most over that span. So even though UCLA has kind of refound itself over the last 3 games, that O-line has still really, really struggled.
Nico's been sacked 16 times on the year, which is about 94th in FBS. That's not great. That's not a great number to be at, especially with the way that this Indiana defensive line has been dominating. They're tied for 3rd in the entire country with 26 sacks. That seems like a shape up right there. I do want to do a bit on the comparison, Thomas. Every number is completely flipped upside down. This was a team that was only averaging about 14 points per game, giving up around 36 in the first 3 games of the season. The last 3, 22 points allowed per game, and that's inflated by the 37 Penn State had. They're averaging over 30 in the 3-game win streak. What does it take for Tim Skipper to keep this role as interim and be promoted as a full-time head coach? Because that is an impressive turnaround, and they're playing high-level football.
2 things for me, guys. First, I'll start with continuity. Tim Skipper and defensive coordinator Kevin Coyle were together at Fresno State from 2021 to 23. Actually, Skipper was the linebackers coach where Coyle was the D coordinator. Now they're here at UCLA together, continuing a little bit, kind of a weird way of saying this, but continuity. Jerry Neuheisel has been at UCLA his whole life, right? He's been the receivers coach, the tight ends coach. Now he's the offensive coordinator. Guys, the other thing for me is belief. These guys, all it takes is a little bit of belief, a little bit of energy to get pumped into these guys, get some energy going in this program. And guys, it takes belief to get a culmination of an upset. Urban Meyer, who will be here for Big Noon Kickoff, has talked about it before. I love what he says of, it's not, hey, let's go win. It's, hey, let's get 5 yards here. Let's get a first down here. Hey, let's get a 3 and out here. Let's get a turnover here. Hey, let's get a big play here. Let's get in the end zone here. That's how you get from 0 to 100 on a brutal upset.
I mean, you could see Tim Skipper with the mind that he has, the way he's been able to kind of centralize everything and move forward through a disastrous start to the season. And then Jerry Neuheisel knows UCLA, knows the culture of UCLA football, and has kind of connected the team through that. So there is a bond, there's a camaraderie this team has really built through not really a great season so far, but they are one of the cooler stories in college football, just the way they've been able to kind of right the ship and look like a complete football team that is playing at high level. The one thing is their remaining schedule is daunting. They have a ridiculous schedule ahead of them, including playing on the road against the number 2 team in the country, Graham.
Yeah, on the road at number 2 Indiana, and then a bye week. Get some time to rest for a gauntlet that they have to go through to end the season. At home against Nebraska, who was ranked number 25th not too long ago, and then at number 1 Ohio State. That's the kicker. You're at number 2, you're at number 1, have to go to the Midwest. This UCLA team, their body's going to be on 9 o'clock time by the time that they're kicking off. That's another thing to think about. A lot of the talk, actually, last year's basketball season was about how it's so much harder to come west to east than east to west. The Bruins are really, really going to be tested just because of the fact that it's going to be bright and early for them in this game.
Some of the numbers, when you look at it from a season standpoint, the pass defense for UCLA has done a really solid job. In all of FBS, they rank around 25th in total yards allowed per game, under 180, only 12 passing touchdowns but they go against one of the best passing offenses in the country, Thomas. Fernando Mendoza, who's tied for first in the nation for passing touchdowns.
Yeah, first of all, it's just protecting Mendoza. We've talked about comfortability. I think that was a word we've used a lot, Graham. Keeping him comfortable in the pocket, not letting them get after him. And then it's simple. They have better playmakers on the outside than I think UCLA does. And can they use those playmakers to their advantage? And then just it doesn't have to be big plays for Indiana. We've seen it. They can win with big plays, and they can win with just normal, small, get after you on the ground game. I think the ground games actually might be the bigger story here.
That's where something really jumps off the page. UCLA's rush defense, they're allowing just under 190 yards per game. They've allowed 12 touchdowns on the ground, allowing about 5.1 yards per carry as well. And it's an IU rush defense that ranks 8th in all of college football. The numbers don't lie, Graham. It will just when you look at numbers straight up, IU should be able to kind of push their way in the trenches. This is also a UCLA team that has only gotten to the quarterback 6 times defensively. 6 sacks is not great. That is worse than the Big Ten and tied for second fewest in all of college football. There are some significant numbers that are very favorable for Indiana.
Yeah, definitely. The statistics absolutely tip this one way more than the other, which is kind of why this game is also, I've seen some spaces calling it the real trap game. Michigan State, maybe the hangover game. This one might be the trap game. You're using both terms. I think what it's really going to come down to is the first half. That is where UCLA has had its success over the last 3 games. UCLA has outscored its opponents 58-17 in the first half. That is absolutely where this game is going to be won or lost for the Bruins. They have to come out hot. They have to somehow establish that rushing game with an offensive line that has struggled, and they've got to free up Nico, even though he's a little bit banged up.
I think one thing for certain about this Indiana team, when Cignetti talked on Monday, when the players have talked, they know this team is 3-4, but they're treating this team like they're 3-0.
Yeah.
Because that's really where everything is trending right now, and they're playing good football. And I think that matters, is etching that into your brain that while this team has a losing record, they're playing very high-level football and beating teams, beating quality teams, beating conference teams on the road as well. That matters. And before we head out, let's do our score predictions. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to be right. Thomas right now has the crown for the Indiana pick over Oregon. We'll go down the line. I don't know who should do it first. Flip a coin. Maybe we don't have a coin. Graham, you go first.
All right, I'll go first. I've got Indiana winning 44-21. I think the rushing game is really what's going to sell this for me in favor of IU. I think that my bold prediction, I know this isn't part of the show, but I feel like every time I bring up a bold prediction now, my bold prediction that this is going to be the best run game for Indiana since the end of non-con play and the Illinois game. Really struggled. I think this is a breakout game for Roman Himby. I think, UCLA, it's really struggled against the rush game, allowing, like you said, I think 5 yards per carry. Against Michigan State, when Indiana really struggled on the ground, IU still averaged about 4.5 yards per carry, and that was really, really struggling. I think Indiana's going to win with a pretty convincing margin.
I think that west to east travel matters, Graham. I think playing in a hostile environment also matters a lot. When they went out to Michigan State, that was kind of a defeated and dejected Michigan State team that was trending in the wrong direction. Yes, it was homecoming, but it wasn't that much of a rowdy environment. UCLA got just blitzed in their first game of the season against Utah in a rowdy environment out in Utah. This is a rowdy environment here. It's the number 2 team in the country. People want to watch this team. That's going to be loud. That's going to be a factor. The rush game, I agree with that. I think over 250 yards on the ground for the Hoosiers. They win 41-17. I still think Nico I is able to break off some big plays for the Bruins, get some scores on the board.
How does UCLA upset Indiana, right? First of all, get the crowd out of it. Chunk plays, try and get long plays, but also sustain drives. What wins these upset is time of possession, controlling the game like basketball, slowing it down, forcing turnovers. And then Indiana can get very creative on the D-line. UCLA is going to have to try and use that against them a little bit, and they won't. Indiana wins this one, I think, 45-13. I understand the hype around UCLA. They've had an impressive last 3 games, but this is the number 2 team in the country we're talking about. I understand they beat Penn State when they were top 10. We've seen what Penn State has turned into.
Yeah.
I don't think Indiana folds on this one.
This is an Indiana team that doesn't take any opponent lightly, and it starts from the top. It starts from their head coach, and I think it's no different. But that's going to wrap up another episode of Crimson Kickoff. Indiana and UCLA, they kick off noon, big noon kickoffs here. A lot of fireworks. Gus Johnson on the call. Imagine a lot of energy going to be on that Fox call. But for Graham Nash, Thomas Crow, and our whole production crew, I'm Joe Cronin from Merchants Bank Field here at Memorial Stadium, saying so long, and we'll see you next time.
Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana.
Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone.
Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat.